Well, it's almost the end of summer, so I'm gonna share with you the top things that are great to freeze right now. So there are a couple of fruits, but a lot of vegetables that need to be blanched before we put them in the freezer. But the process isn't hard at all, so we have to start there. So let me share with you how you could quickly blanch your vegetables.
One thing I will say is to definitely wash your fruits and veggies before you put them in the freezer. Some things need to be blanched and others really don't need to be. Just bring a pot of water to boil, add 1 tablespoon of salt, and the veggies will take 3 to 5 minutes to cook. I noticed that 4 minutes is perfect. Then drop them in a large bowl of ice water. This will help shock them and cool. Then drain your vegetables and then you're ready to freeze. But I actually don't blanch my corn. It actually turns out really fine and still tastes great. Green beans, corn, and peas freeze great. But for your green beans, you can cut the stems off beforehand and go through all the steps of the blanching process that I talked about before. Lay them on a baking sheet, pop them in the freezer for about an hour, then transfer to a Ziploc bag or airtight container and put them in your freezer. With broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and asparagus, just cut them into bite-sized pieces, or you can leave your Brussels sprouts whole, blanch them, and then just follow the process of laying them flat on a tray and freezing them for a little while. Do you or your neighbors have an abundance of zucchini? You'll go through the same blanching process and preparing for the freezer process as well. When you're ready to use it, thaw it out, drain out any of the excess liquid. You could freeze shredded zucchini as well, which is perfect for any baking. Let it thaw and drain it out in a cheesecloth and you're good to go. Tomatoes. You can actually freeze these whole. Wash your tomatoes before freezing and then decide at this point if you're going to keep the skin on your tomato or not for freezing. You can blanch your tomatoes before freezing. I don't. I actually freeze them whole. I'll put them in bags and toss them in my big freezer, and I give it about a day. When I take them out, they're like a softball, and let my food saver machine do the rest of the work. Then when it's time to use them, I slip them into my slow cooker, all nice and frozen, let them cook all day. I'll end up straining them later to get all the bits of chunk out, and then I have tomato sauce, which I could use later on for pizza sauce or just make a yummy tomato soup. Spinach and kale are great for the freezer. I mostly store spinach. This will help you save a ton of money on spinach when you're adding it to soups, stews, and smoothies. You can also make fruit smoothie packets with your frozen spinach and berries and bananas. We love having these on hand. Yes, you can freeze avocado. You could freeze them whole or mashed. You'll just need to peel them in half, take the seed out. I like to cut my avocados up in big chunks, sprinkle them with lemon juice, lay them down on a baking sheet, and put them in my freezer, probably for about an hour. Then I'll add them to a bag or a container. These are great to grab when you want to throw them on a salad or toss them in a smoothie. Carrots. Late summer is considered the peak of their season. So freezing them for later, we are preserving their best flavor. We'll also put the carrots through the same blanching process. Peppers do freeze well. And the best part about peppers is you don't need to blanch them before you freeze them. But you're definitely not going to get that crunch after they're frozen. But they're still great chopped up or sliced up to add into fajitas, on top of pizzas, in stir fries. Just wash, chop, and slice the raw peppers before freezing. With jalapeno peppers, you can pop a whole jalapeno right into the freezer. After they're frozen, they're somewhat softer. So I like to de-seed some of them, chop them up, and then throw them into any recipe that calls for a jalapeno, especially in recipes that involve cooking them rather than using them raw. Let's freeze some herbs. Rinse your herbs in clean water to remove any dirt and pat them dry or dry them in a salad spinner. Harder herbs like rosemary, dill, thyme, bay, or sage could be frozen right on the stem. Spread the herbs in a single layer on a baking sheet and place it in the freezer. Once the herbs are frozen, loosely place them in an airtight container or Ziploc freezer bag. Then remove the sprigs one at a time as needed. You could freeze your herbs in water. For herbs like parsley and cilantro, you can remove the leaves from the stems, pack them by tablespoons into ice cube trays, cover with water, and place in the freezer. Or you can also use olive oil with this process. And your fresh herbs can last up to 12 months in your freezer. You can freeze your citrus whole, sliced in half, or in wedges. A cool part is that you can also freeze the zest. You can zest your lemon after it's frozen or before. Line a pan with freezer paper or parchment paper. Slice or quarter your citrus, place it on the pan, and then add it to a flat shelf in your freezer. Once the citrus has been frozen solid for about 2 or 3 hours, place the wedges or slices in a freezer-safe bag, jar, or container. Cherries. Start with ripe cherries, rinse them and pat them dry, and then pit your cherries. I do have a pitter, but I'm not very good at it. If you don't have a pitter, you can use tweezers or even a lobster picker. Or you could just cut the cherry in half, exposing the pit, and remove it. Arrange the pitted cherries in a single layer on a lined baking sheet. Place them in the freezer for a few hours or overnight. And once they're frozen, you can go ahead and transfer them to a container or a plastic bag. Save for the holidays and make yourself your favorite cherry desserts. This yummy cherry sheet cake, oh my goodness, you guys, this is so good. I'll leave a recipe link down below for you. Starting in August, you can get mangoes at a great deal. I've been seeing them for 75 to 69 cents each. Use a knife to remove the skin from the mango and then slice into bite-sized pieces or slices. Place the mango pieces on a tray or shallow casserole dish and freeze for 3 to 5 hours or until firm. Then transfer the mango pieces to a Ziploc bag or airtight container, label, and put them in your freezer, where they will last up to 10 months. Frozen bananas are perfect for smoothies or desserts. You can freeze them whole with the peel on. You can slice them into bite-sized pieces or big chunks. You can add 1 to 2 tablespoons of lemon juice to help prevent browning in the freezer for the container. But if I'm adding them to smoothies, I honestly just skip this process. Definitely take advantage of the summer season when berries are in full force. So when these are in season or you see a good deal, snag them to prepare for your freezer. Lay them down flat on a baking sheet to freeze before storing. But sometimes I skip the step of putting them on a baking sheet and put them in a Ziploc bag and put them in my freezer. My strawberries do well with this and they don't stick together. At the height of summer, there's peaches and nectarines. You can blanch them for 30 seconds and then drop them in the bowl of ice. This helps loosen the skin. But sometimes I just will take what I have and peel them, cut them up, and then put them on the tray. So if you really don't want to do the blanching process, you don't have to. So lay them flat again on a baking sheet, pop them in your freezer for about an hour, I usually do, or when I remember to grab them out. And then I'll put them in my food saver bags or Ziploc bags to get ready for the freezer. You could freeze your fruits and vegetables for 12 to 18 months, but after this time you may notice a difference in taste and texture. I have had stuff in my freezer for well over a year and a half and they've done great, especially if you store them right. So let's jump in on some ways that you can store your fruits and vegetables in the freezer. So I have a ton of these freshware food storage containers. I grabbed them on Amazon. There were 24 in a pack and they're 32 ounces. My go-to items for freezing food are freezable Ziploc bags and of course any vacuum sealer machine. I have the Food Saver. With a vacuum sealer machine, you have over a year or more to store your food. No matter how great you are sealing up your freezer bags, air always seems to get in and there's a higher risk of freezer burn. Okay, if you would like to see some more things you can freeze, click on the video 40 foods that freeze well. If there's a food you're wondering if you can freeze, let me know and I'll add it in the next video. And if you would like to see my go-to freezer aisle must-haves, click on the video here. Thank you so much for joining me and we'll see you soon. Bye.